Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when we must look inward and ask, what am I holding on to that holds me back? Not everything in our lives is meant to stay. Some people, habits, and memories were never meant to journey with us forever. We cling to them because they feel familiar, comfortable, perhaps even safe. But comfort is a deceiver, and safety is sometimes the greatest enemy of growth. The hardest lesson I've learned is that not all ties are meant to bind. Some are threads meant to unravel so that new fabric may be woven. And it is up to us to decide when to let those threads go. I know what you're thinking. Letting go is terrifying. The prospect of stepping into the unknown, free of the connections we've clung to, can feel like a lonely void. But, my friends, the void is where you meet yourself. In the silence, you rediscover the voice that's been drowned out by the noise of the world and the echoes of others' expectations. To cut ties is not to abandon, it is to honor what once was, while acknowledging that it is no longer. It is an act of self-respect to let go of what stifles your spirit. This is not a selfish act, it is self-preservation. And as you release those ties, you will feel grief. But grief is not your enemy, it is the proof that you've loved, that you've cared, that you've been human. Allow yourself to feel it, but don't let it tether you. Forgive the ones who hurt you, even if they'll never hear those words. But remember, forgiveness is not an invitation to remain in harm's way. Cutting ties clears the way for something extraordinary and makes space for growth, for new beginnings, for the serendipitous encounters that will shape your future. It's not an ending, it's a transformation. So, I implore you, take a deep breath and summon the courage to sever the strings that have become chains. It's time to let go of what's holding you back. It's time to walk forward unburdened. It's time to cut ties. The weight of attachment is an invisible burden we carry, often without realizing its impact on our lives. It manifests in ways that are subtle yet profound. Relationships that have turned toxic, but remain intact out of habit, dreams we outgrew but stubbornly cling to, or identities we crafted long ago, but no longer resemble who we truly are. These attachments, though once meaningful and perhaps even necessary, can become heavy shackles that hinder our growth, creativity, and ability to embrace life fully. To understand the weight of attachment, we must first recognize its origins. As human beings, we seek connection, stability, and meaning. We hold tightly to the things, people, and ideas that provide these, for they offer us a sense of safety and familiarity. However, what we rarely consider is how time changes us. Who we were when those connections were formed is often very different from who we are today. Life moves forward, reshaping our priorities, perspectives, and desires, yet our attachments often remain static, rooted in a version of ourselves that no longer exists. The dissonance created by this mismatch can quietly erode our sense of peace. But why do we resist letting go? The answer lies in our fear of change and uncertainty. Attachment offers an illusion of control, a sense that we can hold on to something constant in an unpredictable world. There is comfort in familiarity, even when that familiarity is harmful or no longer serves our purpose. The idea of severing a tie can feel like stepping into the unknown, where the safety net we've clung to suddenly vanishes. Lies the separation from our congealed. What if we regret our decision? What if the absence of what we're attached to leaves a void too vast to fill? These questions plague us, leading to hesitation and inertia. We also wrestle with a sense of guilt and obligation, particularly when our attachments involve people. Cutting ties with someone, a friend, a partner, or even a family member, feels like betrayal. We convince ourselves that endurance is an act of loyalty, that staying connected is a testament to our kindness or strength. What we fail to see is that staying in relationships that weigh us down doesn't just harm us. It harms the other person too. When we remain out of obligation rather than authenticity, we deny them the opportunity to grow, to find relationships that better suit their own journey. The weight of attachment is not limited to relationships. It extends to our ambitions and identities. How often do we cling to a dream that no longer excites us simply because we've invested so much time and energy into it? How often do we hold on to a version of ourselves defined by past achievements, societal expectations, or roles we've outgrown, because letting go would feel like admitting defeat? These attachments keep us stuck in cycles of stagnation, preventing us from exploring new paths and evolving into our fullest selves. Carrying the weight of attachment affects every aspect of our being. Emotionally, it drains us, filling our hearts with frustration, resentment, and longing for a different reality. Mentally, it clouds our judgment, making it difficult to discern what truly matters. Physically, the stress and tension of holding on manifest in fatigue, restlessness, and even illness. The longer we carry these burdens, the heavier they become, until one day we realize we've been walking through life bent under their weight. Releasing attachments is not about forgetting or devaluing what once mattered to us. It's about acknowledging that everything in life has a season, and that clinging to what is no longer meant to be only delays our journey forward. It's about trusting that by lightening our load, we free ourselves to move with greater ease and clarity toward new opportunities. It's about understanding that true strength lies not in holding on, but in having the courage to let go. Only when we shed the unnecessary weight can we rise to the heights we were always meant to reach. The fear of letting go is perhaps one of the most paralyzing emotions we face in life. It is a quiet, insidious force that convinces us to remain where we are, even when we know deep down that staying is no longer right for us. It whispers doubts into our ears, paints worst-case scenarios in our minds, and builds walls around us, making the prospect of change seem not just daunting but this fear, while natural, often becomes the barrier between us and the life we are meant to live. To let go is to step into the unknown, and there is nothing the human mind fears more than uncertainty. We are creatures of habit, seeking patterns and predictability in an ever-changing world. What we have, whether it's a relationship, a job, or even a routine, represents a form of stability, a foundation on which we've built our sense of self and our understanding of the world. Letting go of that foundation, even when it begins to crumble, feels like stepping off a ledge without knowing if there's a safety net below. It's not just the fear of falling, it's the fear of losing everything we've known, even if what we've known no longer serves us. Much of this fear is rooted in attachment to identity. We tie so much of who we are to the people, places, and roles in our lives that the thought of releasing them feels like losing pieces of ourselves. A relationship may become a part of our identity, and the idea of letting it go feels like unraveling the fabric of who we are. A career path we followed for years may define us in the eyes of others, and walking away feels like shedding not just a job but an entire persona we've carefully constructed. This attachment is what makes the fear of letting go so profound. It's not just about losing the external, but about confronting the internal void that may remain in its absence. There's also the fear of regret, a nagging voice that questions whether we're making the right decision. What if letting go was a mistake? What if the thing or person we release was in fact the best we could ever have? This fear traps us in a cycle of hesitation, clinging to what we know because the thought of choosing wrong feels unbearable. But the irony is that staying out of fear often leads to greater regret. We remain stuck, unable to move forward, and one day we look back and wonder how much of life we missed because we were too afraid to take a leap of faith. The fear of letting go is compounded by the illusion of control. We believe that holding on gives us power, that if we just try harder, give more, or wait long enough, things will change. But life is not a puzzle we can solve by sheer will. There are things beyond our control, people we cannot change, situations we cannot fix, and endings we cannot prevent. The fear of letting go often stems from the refusal to accept this truth. We cling not because it's right, but because it feels like the only way to maintain a semblance of control in an unpredictable world. At its core, the fear of letting go is a fear of loss. We fear losing what is familiar, even if it's painful. We fear losing a sense of security, even if it's false. We fear losing a part of ourselves, even if it's a part that no longer aligns with who we've become. But perhaps the greatest fear is the fear of what comes next, the vast, uncharted territory of life after letting go. Well, it's the fear of the empty space that remains, a space we must fill with something new, something uncertain, something unknown. And yet, in that fear lies an opportunity. Letting go is not just an act of release, it is an act of trust. Trust in ourselves, trust in the journey ahead, and trust in the resilience of the human spirit. The fear will not vanish, it will linger, testing our resolve. But courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward in spite of it. To face the fear of letting go is to acknowledge its power, while refusing to let it dictate the course of our lives. It is the first step toward freedom, growth, and a life that is truly our own. Self-respect and boundaries are the cornerstones of a life lived with authenticity and purpose. Yet they are often overlooked or compromised in the name of keeping peace, preserving relationships, or fulfilling societal expectations. The act of cutting ties, while challenging, is an ultimate expression of self-respect, a declaration to the world and to yourself that your worth is not contingent on how much you endure or how tightly you hold on to what diminishes you. Boundaries in this context are not walls to shut others out, but rather lines that protect your peace, integrity, and well-being. At the heart of self-respect lies the understanding that you deserve to live a life that aligns with your values and aspirations. It is not selfish to prioritize your own needs and mental health. In fact, it is necessary. Yet, many of us find it difficult to set boundaries or sever ties because we equate these actions with failure or weakness. We convince ourselves that enduring toxic relationships or situations is a sign of strength, that sacrificing our own happiness is noble, and that staying in unhealthy dynamics demonstrates loyalty. But true loyalty begins with being loyal to yourself. When you compromise your self-respect to keep others comfortable, you lose sight of your own worth. We often remain in situations that drain us because we fear the consequences of setting boundaries. Will others see us as cold or unkind? Will we lose their approval? This fear of judgment traps us in cycles of people-pleasing and self-neglect, where we prioritize others' feelings over our own well-being. But the truth is, those who genuinely value and respect you will honor the boundaries you set, and those who react negatively to your boundaries are often the very reason those boundaries needed to exist in the first place. Respect is a two-way street, and relationships built on manipulation, control, or disregard for your needs are not relationships worth preserving. Setting boundaries and cutting ties when necessary is not about creating conflict or acting out of spite. It is about clarity, being clear about what you will and will not accept in your life. It is about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and that constantly giving of yourself without replenishing your own energy leaves you depleted and resentful. When you allow others to overstep your boundaries, you teach them that your needs are secondary, that your time and energy are limitless, and that your self-respect is negotiable. But when you enforce boundaries, you teach them and yourself that you value your own dignity and peace. Self-respect also involves recognizing that not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. Some relationships serve a purpose for a season, teaching us lessons or helping us grow, but they are not meant to last indefinitely. It takes courage to accept when a connection has run its course, especially if you've invested deeply in it. But holding on out of habit, guilt, or fear only prolongs the inevitable and prevents both parties from moving on to something more fulfilling. Letting go is not a rejection of the past. It is an acknowledgement that growth sometimes requires distance. Enforcing boundaries can feel uncomfortable, especially if you've spent much of your life avoiding confrontation or prioritizing others over yourself. It may even lead to temporary loss of relationships, approval, or familiar dynamics. But in the long run, the discomfort of setting boundaries pales in comparison to the pain of living without them. Each time you stand firm in your self-respect, you reclaim a piece of your power. You remind yourself that your worth is not tied to how much you endure, but to how boldly you choose honor your own needs. In the process of setting boundaries and cutting ties, you may feel guilt, especially if the other person tries to manipulate your emotions or paint you as the villain. But guilt is often a byproduct of unlearning patterns of self-sacrifice that no longer serve you. It is not an indicator that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're breaking free from old conditioning and stepping into your own power. So over time, the guilt will fade, replaced by a sense of liberation and clarity. When you choose self-respect, you open the door to a life that feels authentic and true. You surround yourself with people who uplift and support you rather than drain or diminish you. You create space for opportunities that align with your values and bring you joy. And most importantly, you send a message to yourself and the world that you are worthy of love, of peace, of a life that reflects the best of who you are. Self-respect and boundaries are not just acts of preservation, they are acts of transformation, paving the way for a life that feels truly your own. Acknowledging the seasons of life is one of the most profound and humbling realizations we can embrace. Life, in all its complexity, moves in cycles, much like nature. There are times of growth and renewal, times of stability and contentment, and times of decay and endings. Each season has its purpose, its lessons, and its role in shaping who we are. However, the challenge lies in accepting that not all seasons are meant to last forever. Some relationships, experiences, and stages in life are meant to bloom brightly but then fade, making way for something new. We often resist this truth because endings carry an inherent sadness. The idea that something meaningful has a finite existence can feel like a loss, and loss is painful. Yet, clinging to what has already run its course does not preserve it, it stifles it. A tree that holds onto its withered leaves cannot make room for the new buds of spring. In the same way, when we refuse to acknowledge that a season in our life has ended, we block ourselves from moving forward and experiencing the beauty and growth that awaits in the next phase. This resistance often stems from our tendency to romanticize permanence. We are conditioned to believe that the best things in life, relationships, dreams, or successes should last forever. We hold tightly to the idea that if something ends, it somehow diminishes its value. But this is a flawed perception. The value of a season in life is not measured by its duration, but by the depth of the impact it has on us. A brief connection that inspires us, a fleeting moment of joy, or a short-lived success can carry as much meaning as something that lasts a lifetime. Recognizing this allows us to honor what was without feeling bound to it indefinitely. There is also a deep fear of change that keeps us anchored to seasons that no longer serve us. Change disrupts the familiar, and familiarity provides a sense of security. Even when we know that a particular season is over, when a job no longer challenges us, a relationship no longer nurtures us, or a way of life no longer fulfills us, we hesitate. We tell ourselves that it's easier to stay, to endure, to make do. We convince ourselves that holding on is safer than venturing into the unknown. Yet, in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to grow into the next version of who we are meant to become. Acknowledging the seasons of life also requires us to let go of the illusion of control. We cannot force the clock to stop, nor can we rewind it. Life moves forward, regardless of our willingness to accept it. The more we resist the natural flow of change, the more we struggle. But when we embrace the inevitability of transitions, we find peace. We learn to trust that every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. Jamud, acknowledge, very true is the say. The leaves must fall for the tree to rest and prepare for new growth. The same is true for us. Each ending is not a failure or a loss, it is a transition, a doorway to what comes next. To fully live within the seasons of life, we must cultivate gratitude for what each one brings, even as we prepare to let it go. It is easy to feel bitterness when something we value comes to an end, but gratitude shifts our perspective. It allows us to see the purpose of each season, the lessons it taught us, and the ways it shaped us. A relationship that ends may have taught us about love, vulnerability, or resilience. A career path we leave behind may have prepared us for new opportunities we couldn't have imagined. Even painful experiences hold their own wisdom, teaching us strength, compassion, or patience. Acknowledging the seasons of life also teaches us to be present. When we understand that nothing lasts forever, we begin to cherish the moments we have, knowing they are fleeting. We hold our loved ones a little closer, savor our victories a little longer, and appreciate the quiet, simple joys that might otherwise go unnoticed. Living with this awareness deepens our connection to life, making it richer and more. Ultimately, life seasons remind us that we are constantly evolving. Who we are today is not who we were yesterday, nor who we will be tomorrow. Change is the one constant, and when we embrace it, we free ourselves to grow, to explore, and to experience all the beauty and possibility that each new season has to offer. By honoring the cycles of life, we honor ourselves and the journey we're on. A journey defined not by how long we cling to each chapter, but by how fully we live and learn from every moment. The role of courage in cutting ties cannot be overstated. To sever a connection, be it with a person, a situation, or even an identity, requires a bravery that goes beyond mere action. It demands that we confront our deepest fears, challenge long-held beliefs, and step into an uncertain future with no guarantee of immediate comfort or clarity. Courage, in this context, is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. It is a quiet strength that whispers, "This is necessary for your growth, even if it hurts." The act of cutting ties is inherently uncomfortable. It disrupts the status quo, shakes the foundations of familiarity, and often comes with a wave of guilt or doubt. There's a natural instinct to second-guess the decision, to wonder if we've been too harsh or impulsive, or if things could somehow improve if we just held on a little longer. This inner conflict is where courage finds its purpose. It steadies us in the face of uncertainty, reminding us that growth is rarely without discomfort. True courage is not found in avoiding pain, but in enduring it for the sake of a better tomorrow. What makes courage so essential in this process is the emotional vulnerability it requires. Cutting ties often means addressing the stories we've told ourselves about why we stayed. Perhaps we've convinced ourselves that leaving would make us selfish, or that the connection we're severing is a vital part of who we are. It takes immense bravery to untangle them, to admit that we've been holding on out of fear rather than love, or out of obligation rather than joy. Acknowledging these truths is an act of courage in itself. It forces us to look in the mirror and confront the ways we may have compromised our own happiness. Courage also plays a critical role in facing the reactions of others. When we decide to cut ties, we may be met with resistance, judgment, or even hostility. People who benefit from our staying, whether consciously or unconsciously, may try to convince us to reconsider, to make us feel guilty, or to paint us as the antagonist in their narrative. This can be deeply unsettling, especially if we've built our sense of self around pleasing others or maintaining harmony. Courage is what allows us to stand firm in our decision to prioritize our well-being over the opinions of others. and to trust that our choices are valid, even if they are not understood or accepted by everyone. There is also the courage required to face the void left behind after cutting ties. It's one thing to prepare for the act of letting go, it's another to live in the aftermath of that decision. The absence of what was once familiar can feel like a gaping hole, a reminder of what we've lost. In these moments, courage is the light that guides us forwards. It tells us to be patient with ourselves, to resist the urge to fill the void with something or someone, simply to escape the discomfort. It teaches us that the emptiness we feel is not a punishment, but an opportunity, a space to rediscover ourselves and create something new. Courage is also what allows us to forgive ourselves in this process. Cutting ties often comes with a lingering sense of what if? What if we could have tried harder, given more, or held on longer? These thoughts can be relentless, feeding into feelings of regret or self-doubt. But courage silences this inner critic, reminding us that choosing to let go is not a failure, but a sign of strength. It takes immense bravery to recognize when something is no longer serving us, and to act on that realization, even when it's painful or unpopular. Courage empowers us to embrace the unknown. Letting go means stepping into a future we cannot predict, one where the familiar patterns and safety nets are gone. This uncertainty can be terrifying, but it is also where possibility resides. Courage allows us to trust that the act of cutting ties is not the end, but a beginning, a chance to grow, to heal, and to create a life that feels more aligned with who we are becoming. It is the force that propels us forward, not because we are fearless, but because we understand that staying stagnant is no longer an option. In the end, courage is what transforms the act of cutting ties from a moment of loss into a moment of liberation. It is the inner strength that carries us through the uncertainty, the discomfort, and the fear, reminding us that the hardest decisions are often the ones that lead to the greatest growth. Through courage, we honor ourselves, our journey, and the potential for something better on the other side. Healing is not a destination but a journey, a process that unfolds in its own time and in its own way. When we cut ties, whether with a person, a situation, or a part of ourselves, the act of letting go is only the first step. What follows is the work of healing, a deeply personal and transformative experience that requires patience, grace, and an unflinching willingness to face what lies beneath the surface. It is in this space, where the pain of release meets the promise of renewal, that true growth begins. Healing begins with acknowledgement. To heal, we must first confront the reality of what we are letting go of and the impact it has had on us. This can be one of the hardest parts of the process because it demands honesty about the wounds we carry, the choices we've made, and the patterns we've allowed to persist. It's easy to look away, to distract ourselves with busyness, or deny the depth of our emotions. But healing cannot happen in avoidance. It requires us to sit with the discomfort, to name the hurt, and to accept that pain is a natural part of the process. As we move through this journey, we often find ourselves revisiting old memories, questioning decisions, and grappling with the complex emotions that arise. Grief, anger, sadness, and even relief can coexist, creating a whirlwind that can feel overwhelming. But each emotion serves a purpose. Grief honors the loss, even if it was necessary. Anger acknowledges the boundaries that were crossed, or the ways we were mistreated. Sadness reminds us of the love or time we invested, while relief signals the freedom we've gained. These emotions are not to be suppressed or judged. They are to be felt and understood. Healing asks us to hold space for all of them, knowing they are part of the tapestry of our experience. Forgiveness is another essential component of healing, though it is often misunderstood. Forgiveness is not about excusing or forgetting what has happened, nor is it about reconciling with those who have caused us harm. Instead, forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves, a way to release the grip of anger, resentment, or bitterness that keeps us tethered to the past. It is an act of reclaiming our power, of choosing peace over pain, in forgiving others, and even ourselves. We unburden our hearts and create space for something new to take root. The journey of healing also requires us to rebuild trust. Trust in ourselves, in our decisions, and in the world around us. When we cut ties, especially in situations where we've been hurt or betrayed, it's natural to feel a sense of doubt or uncertainty. We may question our ability to discern what is right for us, or fear that history will repeat itself. Rebuilding this trust takes time and intentionality. It involves listening to our intuition, honoring our boundaries, and recognizing that mistakes are not failures but opportunities to learn and grow. As we rebuild trust, we also rebuild our confidence, reclaiming our ability to navigate life with strength and clarity. Self-compassion is perhaps the most vital element of the healing process. It's easy to be hard on ourselves, to replay moments we wish we had handled differently, or to criticize ourselves for not letting go sooner. But healing is not linear, and it is rarely clean or predictable. There will be setbacks and moments of doubt, but these do not define the journey. What matters is how we treat ourselves along the way. Harried Patton. Self-compassion invites us to extend the same kindness and understanding to ourselves that we would to a dear friend. It reminds us that we are human, that we are doing the best we can, and that growth often comes in the messy, imperfect moments. Healing is also about rediscovery. When we cut ties, we often leave behind not just a person or situation, but also the version of ourselves that existed within that context. This can feel disorienting, as if a part of our identity has been stripped away, but it is also an opportunity to rediscover who we are outside of those constraints. What brings us joy? What values guide us? What dreams have we set aside? The process of healing allows us to reconnect with these questions and, in doing so, to redefine ourselves on our own terms. Healing is about hope. It is the quiet belief that no matter how difficult or painful the process may be, there is light on the other side. Hope is what keeps us moving forward, even when the path is unclear. It reminds us that every wound, no matter how deep, has the capacity to heal, and that every ending holds the potential for a new beginning. Healing is not a straight line or a final destination. It is a testament to our resilience, our courage, and our unwavering commitment to ourselves. It is a journey worth taking, for it leads us not only to a place of peace, but also to a fuller, more authentic version of who we are. Rebuilding after cutting ties is one of the most daunting, yet rewarding aspects of the journey. It is a process of transformation, a chance to craft a life that is more aligned with who you are and who you aspire to become. This phase is not about simply filling the void left by what you've let go of. It's about creating a new foundation, brick by brick, with intention and care. It requires courage, vision, and above all patience, as rebuilding is not an overnight endeavor, but a gradual unfolding of possibilities. When you cut ties, you often dismantle more than just the connection itself. You may find that certain routines, habits, or even parts of your identity were tied to that relationship or situation. In the absence of those familiar anchors, there is an initial sense of disorientation, as if you are standing in an open field with no clear path forward. This is a natural response, and it is important to allow yourself time to adjust to this new reality. Rebuilding begins with acknowledging the blank slate before you and seeing it not as emptiness, but as opportunity. One of the first steps in rebuilding is to reconnect with yourself. Often, in unhealthy dynamics or unfulfilling situations, we lose sight of who we are. We compromise our desires, silence our needs, and mold ourselves to fit into roles that no longer serve us. Cutting ties frees us from these constraints, but it also calls us to rediscover what truly matters to us. This is a time to reflect on your values, passions, and goals. To ask yourself, what do I want my life to look like from here? This process of self-reconnection can be both exhilarating and challenging, as it may require unearthing parts of yourself that have been buried under layers of obligation or conformity. Rebuilding also involves re-establishing a sense of stability. When you let go of something significant, it can feel as though the ground beneath you has shifted. Finding new sources of support and structure is essential to regaining your footing. This might mean forming new routines, pursuing interests that bring you joy, or seeking out relationships that uplift and nourish you. Stability doesn't mean returning to a rigid or predictable way of life. It means creating a foundation that feels secure enough to support your growth. At the heart of rebuilding is the concept of choice. When you cut ties, you reclaim the power to choose what you allow into your life. This is an opportunity to be intentional about the people, experiences, and commitments you engage with. It's a chance to evaluate what aligns with your values and to let go of anything that doesn't. This newfound autonomy can be liberating, but also overwhelming, as the possibilities may seem endless. Taking small, deliberate steps is key. Each choice you make becomes a building block, shaping the life you are creating. As you rebuild, it's important to embrace the idea of imperfection. There will be moments of doubt, setbacks, and trial and error. You may find yourself questioning whether you made the right decision or longing for the comfort of what you left behind. These feelings are part of the process, not signs of failure. Rebuilding is not about achieving perfection. It's about progress. Each step, no matter how small, brings you closer to a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. Another crucial aspect of rebuilding is surrounding yourself with the right people. After cutting ties, you may notice how the absence of certain relationships creates space for new ones to form. Seek out individuals who inspire, encourage, and challenge you to grow. These connections can serve as mirrors, reflecting back your strengths and potential. They remind you that you are not alone on this journey, and that rebuilding is not something you have to do in isolation. Rebuilding also invites you to embrace change. The life you are creating will likely look very different from the one you left behind, and that's okay. Change can be uncomfortable, but it is also a sign of growth. Allow yourself to explore new opportunities, take risks, and step outside of your comfort zone. Rebuilding is a creative process, and like any creation, it thrives on imagination. Rebuilding is about hope. It's about believing in the possibility of a brighter future, even when the present feels uncertain. Hope is what keeps you moving forward, reminding you that the act of cutting ties was not an end, but a beginning. As you rebuild, you may find that the pieces of your life come together in ways you never anticipated, creating a mosaic that is more beautiful and meaningful than you could have imagined. Rebuilding is not just about putting your life back together, it's about transforming it into something new, something that reflects the person you are becoming. It is an act of creation, resilience, and unwavering belief in your own capacity to grow. In the end, the act of cutting ties is not about loss, it is about liberation. It is a courageous declaration that your growth, your peace, and your authenticity are worth the discomfort of letting go. It is about recognizing that staying tethered to what no longer serves you is not an act of loyalty, but one of self-betrayal. By stepping away, you honor your worth and create space for a life that aligns with your true self. This journey is not easy, nor is it quick. It requires courage to confront fears, grace to forgive yourself and others, and patience to navigate the path ahead. It demands that you trust in the process of healing, in the transformative power of rebuilding, and in the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the ties you've released. But most importantly, cutting ties is an act of hope. Hope for a life that is freer, more joyful, and more aligned with who you are. It is a testament to your resilience and your commitment to choosing yourself, even when the world may not understand. And as you walk forward, unburdened by what was, you step into a future that is entirely your own. A future where you are no longer confined by the past, but empowered by the endless potential of what lies ahead.